Hi, I'm Brenda Reese, freedom and forgiveness coach, and a person just like you that is learning to navigate life and all of its challenges. I teach a forgiveness process like no other. It's a blend of practical and spiritual forgiveness. This process guides you into knowing how unforgiveness can be keeping you stuck in your relationships, both personally and professionally, and how it prevents you from releasing resentment and finding joy. Each week, I share practical and some not so practical tips, tools, and advice from myself and other people that are on this journey just like us. This is for you if you are ready to turn your pain into peace. Welcome to the Forgive Yourself podcast. Hi, my name is Brenda Reese, and welcome to the Forgive Yourself podcast. And I am so excited to share with you a very special guest today, Jennifer Spor. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, and then we're going to dive into a really great conversation. Jennifer is the CEO and founder of her namesake company and host of Path of the Awakened Heart podcast, which I highly recommend. It's so good. She is a spiritual advisor, channel, and Akashic Records trauma-informed master consultant and teacher for high-achieving conscious women leaders who are here to live unapologetically expressed in their true and fulfill their highest destiny in this life, being soul-led. All right, here we go. Here's Jennifer. Hi.
Hi, Brenda. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to reconnect with you and have this conversation for those listening. I mean, Brenda and I go pretty far back. We've been connected for a few years now, and it's been wonderful to be connected with her and to see how her journey has unfolded and continues to. And I love the work that you do, Brenda. As we were talking about before we hit record, I personally believe that forgiveness is such a core component of our journey to remembering our truth and living expressed in that. So love to you, and so happy to be here.
Well, and I love that you're all about truth. I love this because that's one thing that I don't think that we are taught, right? Is to be able to know who we are as a person, to know our own truth, right? Because there's so many masks that we have to wear. And especially, with you working with a lot of these conscious women leaders, it's really important to be able to know who we are, where we come from, and also, but who we are now, today, right? Speaking of truth. And I love that you are so good with Akashic Records. I've had readings with you and got to experience your gift, not even a gift. I mean, it's natural with you, but I know that you've worked on it too. And so can you tell a little bit of your story, a little bit of what got you into this work?
Yeah. Yes. I love this question because I first want to start by saying, I believe we have lots of stories on our journey, right?
Yeah.
Some more catalyzing and pivotal for us, than others, because we're here to learn and we're here to evolve, right? So there are lots of stories. That being said, I will share the one that I would say was the initial catalyst for me changing my entire life. It's been several years ago now, but I actually used to work in the retail industry. And like so many other people who I'm sure are listening and can relate to this, I worked my butt off and that whole work hard mentality, and reached a place where I had checked off all the boxes off the list of what 3D society teaches us, right, that it means to achieve success. And what happened eventually is that I reached a place on my journey where I felt like I had checked off those boxes, and I want to say that integrity and following and choosing to pursue what I believe in is something that has always been important to me in my entire life. So I want to say that I loved my career for a long time. And it turns out that, one of the reasons why I stayed in that industry for so long was because I love helping people, which I would later find out, right, is it's like I was dating my purpose versus, being married to it. So, because there were lots of components about it that I loved, which is what kept me in it for so long. So, anyway, what happened was over time, I checked off those boxes and my feelings about what I was doing were changing. I wasn't feeling challenged anymore. And it was feeling, because I was working for a large company too, in a higher level director role, and it started feeling more and more difficult to feel like I was making a difference. And so that's really when the fog started to lift. I started feeling into like what could be next for me. I didn't take action right away. What I did do right away was I started creating more space to explore my spirituality and my spiritual gifts, because I've always been very sensitive, and just for that part of my life for a long time, I pretty much shut those gifts down. I will say that being highly empathic, it did serve me well in that role, in my interactions with people, right?
Yeah.
Customers and employees. So another year or two went by basically, and I was still in the same career, but had embarked on this journey of rediscovering who I was. And really, so what happened was my mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer back then. This was about a year or two after I had this realization.
Yeah.
And there was a very specific moment I remember that was the catalyst for actually taking action to make a change. And I was flying back and forth at the time because my mom was living in Idaho and I was living on the East Coast. And there was this moment where I was sitting at her bedside just a few days before she transitioned, and my phone from my work started blowing up, right? Because there was some issue that was happening. And to this day, I don't even remember exactly what that issue was. And I was in a higher level leadership role. So, I was on all the time, basically.
Mm.
And I realized in that moment, I found myself faced with yet another choice, another scenario, another opportunity to choose, right? Was I going to choose to be fully present to this fire that needed to be put out at this particular time with my work? Or was I going to choose to continue to be present with my mom, who literally was a couple of days away from passing away at that point? So that was the moment for me that I decided that I was no longer stuck in my life. I wasn't going to let fear define me. I had no clue what was going to happen in my life after that moment. I just made a decision. I made a decision right then
Mm.
uh, that I was going to make a change in my life. And that was the beginning of the end of that chapter. So what ended up happening was my mom passed. I eventually stepped down from my role because at the time I wanted to be physically closer to the remaining members of my family.
Mhm.
And a lot like a country song, I often say it's like I packed up my car, rented out my house in New Jersey, packed up my car and headed out west. I
Wow.
drove myself in my car across the country in 4 days. And to this day, it's one of the most freaking liberating experiences of my life. Like driving across the country, you have no idea what's coming and what's going to happen ahead of you, but it's just very liberating and very freeing. So I ended up doing some consulting for a while, but I didn't know that I was going to do this work that I'm doing today
Mhm.
back then. I realized what I was being called to after I took that leap of faith, right? And
Yeah.
this is really important because this is how it works. Like so many of us, because we're scared to make a change, we
Mm.
want to wait until our ego mind thinks the circumstances are just so for us. And that isn't how it works. Everything is energy, and we are powerful divine creators. We create our own reality. So when we're called to change, we need to step up and take the first step, and then God rises up to meet us. So it was sometime later that I realized I was being called to this work, because at the time I was going through this major spiritual awakening and changing my entire life. I had all this abundance of support from therapists and healers and coaches. And what I didn't have at the time, and what I was hard for me to find, was someone who could support me, who could relate to what I was going through, but also support me in actually integrating who I was becoming into my physical reality,
Yeah.
navigating all those changes that were happening. And what did that mean for how my outer reality was changing? So that's when I knew, you know what? I want to help other people. I want to support other people in intentionally navigating their path, in rediscovering who they are, remembering the truth of who they are,
Mhm.
and living fully expressed in that. And the rest is history. Like, I've had several iterations and evolutions on my journey, and lots of spirals since then. But that's what led me here. So
Oh my gosh, that is fabulous. Oh my goodness. You said there were so many good things in there, in the sense of really helping people to know that, we do have to take a leap of faith
mhm.
first. It's kind of like that. It reminded me of that saying, leap and the net will appear.
Yes,
Right.
yeah.
But when
Mhm.
you said that we take the first step, then God rises up to meet us.
Yeah,
That's powerful.
yeah.
Because we as co-creators get to do that, or even we as creators, right? Get to take the action step without knowing. And I think this is probably what you find too, is that fear of that unknown.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. This could be a whole conversation on its own, right? But to say
Right.
that fear in of itself, we, at a soul level, we are wired for expansion.
Hmm.
We are these amazing, powerful creators. Many of us have been living in a society that promotes conformity, that says that change is something to be feared. And the truth is that it's literally the opposite of that. And, it's having that realization, becoming aware to that, and then sometimes the journey to peeling back those layers, right, to your truth
Hmm.
can feel daunting, can also feel extremely joyful and blissful and
Yeah.
fun. But yes, the truth is, uh, there is nothing to fear in terms of change, and where our soul is leading us is always where we're going to be, meant to go.
Oh my gosh. I love this conversation. And speaking of this, because you just said the two things that I know that you probably talk about a lot, which is soul and ego. And
Yes.
the one of the biggest things that I hear people when we talk about it is, how do you discern between the two? Right?
Yeah.
So you help women with like getting on their highest path. So how do we discern between soul and ego?
Yeah. I would say as a first step, right? It's the easiest way to tell the difference is
Yeah.
that your ego is going to be the voice, the aspect of you that questions everything, that has the fear-based thoughts, right? Your soul's guidance, your intuitive guidance is going to always feel neutral, and it's always going to be guiding you toward expansion. And in some cases, your intuitive voice can trigger fear from your ego because it's guiding you toward expansion. It's often going to challenge you and guide you to do things or take actions that are unknown to you. So that's the easiest way
Yeah.
to tell the difference. Something else that I feel very passionately about, that a very simple way that I teach people to tune into their truth, is to understand what that truth feels like in their body, in their physical body, right? Because even now, in many spiritual communities and the personal development industry, when we talk about manifesting, people end up trying to manifest from their mind.
Yes.
And that's only one aspect of many different aspects of who you are. So I love talking about the importance of feeling truth in your body.
Mhm.
Now, this is actually really easy, because even if you're not someone who up to this point has created a lot of space to tune into your soul's voice, you've likely had moments throughout your life where you just knew something. Like you either felt it or you just knew and you couldn't explain why. That's your truth.
Yeah.
So you can think back to, you can recall a scenario or more than one scenario where you experienced that, and then create just a few minutes to really tune into, like, where was I at in that moment? How did I feel? Did I just know? Did I feel something? How did I hear something? How did I experience that? And you can take that and, as a daily practice, anchor into that feeling and
Mhm.
literally use that to make every decision in your life.
Ooh, I love that. I love the anchor into that feeling because it is about feeling. It is about our
It is.
body, right? It is about being in this human body that people are so afraid to be. We're constantly giving, when you mentioned the 3D reality, it's like, I believe, and I think you do too. It's like, being more of a spiritual person, energetic person, we're supposed to be that in the human body. And so therefore, a lot of us have the trauma that keeps us away from the body or afraid to be in it.
Yes.
And with you trauma informed, you probably deal with this quite a bit. And, you want
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, trauma is a major contributing factor to unhealed trauma, to not, wanting to be in our body. I know you do a lot of work around forgiveness
to.
and our, lack of forgiveness. That's another reason why we wouldn't want to be in our body, because there's some part of us that doesn't feel safe to be in our body
Right.
because we've been violated in some way or
Mhm.
experienced some other trauma or tragedy. I'm feeling really strongly guided to add to this, to say, whether it's unhealed trauma or lack or struggling to forgive someone or anything else, the first step towards shifting that is in your willingness
Mm.
to do so.
Yes.
Because when you are willing to do that, despite not understanding what all the experiences are going to be and what the path ahead is going to be, then what happens is your all of your bodies, your mental, spiritual, physical, emotional bodies, your physical body literally instantly releases resistance and opens up, and that allows you to begin to be more grounded into your body.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and it's true. I love how you described that because that's been my experience too with forgiveness. And the key word in forgiveness is willing. That's what I
Yes.
teach all the time. It's just be willing to be willing to be willing, right? Sometimes we have to just take it down to the minutia. But you're right. I love how you expressed that all of the bodies, when they do that, it gives that permission to be grounded in the body. And how many of us crave that?
Yes. Right. We crave that, but because in some instances, right, these unhealed wounds keep us in a space of feeling scared to open up, then what happens is we also acquire other addictions or ways of coping with that, right? And that can be, eating or not eating, or drugs or alcohol or shopping or or
Hmm.
sex even. Like there's so many different ones, and but it all starts with a desire to shift, a desire to get on the other side of that, and only you can do that. But once you take that step, then I highly recommend, reaching out for support. And that can come in a lot of ways, right? Whether you want to invest in working with a therapist or a coach, or find a support group, or, a community. whatever that looks like, but having support on that journey. I want to say journey to healing, right? But I believe healing is remembering, because we've never
Oh,
been broken. We've always been whole. We've always been whole. It's just a matter of bringing ourselves back to a place of remembering that.
mhm.
And the reason why I say only we can do that, right, is because each one of us as humans, as a soul having a human experience, we have this amazing gift of free will, and we get to choose how to use it. So only we can choose that we want to get on the other side of that, or we choose to misuse that free will and continue to stay, like
Yeah.
where we.
Oh my gosh, I love that you said that. That is just remembering, because I don't think that we're broken either. And
Yeah,
that's what I share with clients. Is like, we're not broken. We don't need to be healed, fixed, changed, improved, nothing of that sort. Really, it's just a remembering and coming back, what I always say, coming back home to our heart. That's what I
yeah,
say, because that's where a lot of it stems from, is that's what our remembering, right? Because our brain is gone into safety a lot of times, because that's what it's wired to do. And it's really important. And I love where you were going with this. And you had mentioned 3D
hmm,
before. And so now a lot of people listening probably understand what 3D is. But you also talk about truth. So the call to deeper truth. And I love this. And I'd like to talk a little bit about, have you talk about how do we extract ourselves from this 3D construct? Because you said something really valuable, to live fully expressed in your truth and fulfill your purpose. Because you said that that's what you are here to do. And that's big. That's a beautiful mission and purpose to have. And you help other people do that. So, how would we go about extracting ourselves from this 3D construct?
yeah. So similar to what we were just talking about having the willingness, that's
Yeah.
also the first step in that, right?
Yeah.
And whenever we're feeling that call to deeper truth, we feel it in our lives. We feel it in how we're showing
Mhm.
up. We feel like there's something more, and we may not be clear on what that is, initially. Yet we feel it. So the first step is it really starts with a desire to change, to evolve, to a willingness to see the way that you look at the world and yourself in a different way. Knowing that there's more, even though you're not sure what that is. And so that's really where it starts. And we talked about knowing what that truth feels like in your body. This
Yeah.
is so important, especially in the time that we're living in now on this planet as a collective, because societal structures and so many things that, they really, did they ever really work to begin with, right?
Yeah.
Structures that have promoted, fear-based behaviors and ways of living and promoted conformity for so long are crumbling. And I specifically tend to attract a lot of people in my world, right, that are the people on the path less traveled, that are feeling called to create something, to contribute in a unique way in the world that doesn't exist today in the way that they're being called to bring it
Mhm.
forward. So it's likely that whoever's listening now is having, that feeling too. And
Yeah.
so it starts with knowing what that truth feels like for you, being tuned into your soul's voice, to your
Mhm.
intuitive voice, and then having the willingness to follow it. That's how you extract yourself from those constructs and truly live free.
Oh my God, that was beautiful. And it's so true. When you talk about willingness, it's kind of like people describe it as being sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? They know something's going on and it's like, I'm really tired of doing things the same way. And we all have it. And I want to really encourage this to everyone listening. It's like we all have that little knowing. And I love how you encourage people, go back to a time where you knew you had that and anchor in that feeling, because we all have it. Every single one of us has it. And to be able to go, that right there is the soul's voice. the calling, and the way that you described how to extract yourself from it to be able to get to your truth is really that curiosity, willingness, because, change is hard for a lot of us because of how we've been programmed or raised or however we want to put it, right? And so I love how you had described that and just really being willing, the willingness to just know that there's something else. When people come to you, um do people know what they want to do, or what this, like, they know that they're breaking away. Do they know, or do they come to you kind of to help them?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Some clients think they don't know. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, the reality is that many people already know what they're being called to. They just think they don't know. They think they need clarity because they don't believe that what they're being called to is possible.
I love that.
Right? So that's the reality of it. It's really more about, okay, well, this is what you're being called to. How can we, work together to nurture this shift,
Yeah.
right? So that you believe it, so that you start to believe it. And then it becomes, supporting the client in, okay, now let's take the grounded action, right? To integrate that into your physical reality to really, bring it forward. The integration is big because I've experienced this on my own path as someone who is fulfilling part of their purpose and mission through their business, right?
Yeah.
I've experienced it, and I know many others have as well. It's like you have the purest heart and the intentions to make a difference, and you know what you're being called to. The struggle ends up coming from because you're trying to move in this unpaved path, but within existing constructs of business,
Yes.
right? And ways of showing up that don't apply to you. Literally, it's like one of my friends said this recently too, and I believe it as well. The future of our world, of our economy, is
Yeah.
essentially in all of us being entrepreneurs. What I mean by when I say that is that we're literally going back, because it's been this way in the world before a long time ago, but we're going back to the time of when our currency is us. It's our gifts
Yeah.
and
Oh,
how we can uniquely contribute. And that transcends any kind of construct that exists.
oh, oh my gosh. That just gave me chills. Thank you.
Yeah. I believe it. I believe that's the direction that we're moving in. So the willingness to make that shift on your path, right? And to receive support and to take the actions, because that's part of manifesting. It's part of who we are as creators. We are here to experience this human life as a soul in a human body. And ascension is about balance and harmonizing those bodies.
Ooh, now I have not heard that expressed that way before. I love that. Ascension is harmonizing those bodies.
Yes,
Wow. That simplifies it.
it is
Really
really
does.
simple. I laugh because, because of course I've experienced everything I teach them, right? It's like,
Absolutely.
but yeah, attaining that balance is like so key.
Well, it is. And you do that through the Akashic Records. And is
Yeah, the
that,
Akashic, yep.
yeah. So can you explain to our audience kind of what they are and what it means to access them?
Yeah, so for those who aren't familiar with the Akashic Records, very simply, oh, you know what? I want to back up. I don't
Oh,
know, because the last thought I was having about ascension and
yeah.
harmonizing the bodies, right? And you were saying it's so simple. That's the thought I wanted to share with you, is that the most profound things, right? The most profound truths of who we are here are simple. and and the complexities, and when we feel like we're struggling on our path, that's our ego, our human mind, creating more complicated ways of approaching our life because it thinks through doing that it's going to keep us safe. But in the long term, it actually does the opposite. So that was the
Mm.
thought I wanted to share about that. So now back to the Akashic Records. So very simply, right? The Akashic Records are the library for your soul. So if you're not familiar with working with
Yeah.
the Akashic Records, they're your soul's records. In the Bible, if you're someone who reads the Bible, they're also referred to as the book of life.
Yes.
So it's a storehouse for all of your soul's experiences, your past, present, and future. Linear time does not exist, beyond the earth plane. Really, past, present, and future represent different aspects of your being and your multi-dimensional nature, right?
Yeah.
Everything really exists in the now. In my experience, in all the years that I've been focused on my own growth and in working with other clients, the Akashic Records are one of the most direct paths to ascension. And what is super empowering is that every single one of us can access our Akashic Records,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yes.
we all have them. You don't have to be, gifted or, super psychic or anything like that. The thing is that we all have these psychic abilities. We all have the ability to access our records.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of tapping into that. Now, the Akashic Records are something that people tend to feel called to if they're in a place on their path where they're being called to deeper exploration, right? So
Yes.
pay attention to that. If you're listening to this right now and you're feeling curious,
Hmm.
that's a sign. So I love working in the records with clients because it provides a much more direct path to getting to the root cause of any energetic distortion, whether it's unhealed trauma,
Yeah.
or something else, right? And something I was thinking about this morning before our conversation as well was that, I love going deep, and you can go deep in the Akasha Records. And I also love working in the quantum field. And
Mm.
talk a lot in this conversation today about our willingness, and that being the first step. Wow. If you are in a space on your path, if you're willing and you're in that space, you can access your Akashic Records and literally jump timelines, literally experience instantaneous healing and transformation. I've been blessed to experience it for myself and to hold space for clients to experience it. And wow, is it magical? And by the way, our life here is also meant to be freaking magical.
Yes, it is. And yet we cloud it with so much of our thinking and our
Yeah.
safety and all of the beliefs and patterns. I believe though that we have those for learning. I really do think that everything we go through, we do this for learning, and it depends upon our willingness to look at it differently, right?
Oh,
And that,
absolutely. Which, yeah, reminds me, we were talking a little bit about my story and fate versus destiny earlier. And
yes.
that's exactly what it is. I believe that fate is what we're born into. Fate being defined as those experiences that our soul chose
Hmm.
to have before we came here, that we all have a blueprint for our life here. And then destiny being defined as what you choose with your free will in terms
Yeah.
of how you respond to those. That's the learning.
Oh, That's so beautifully said. And I highly encourage everyone to check out because you talk about this a lot. You've got what the newsletter, and then you've got your YouTube channel that you were talking about, especially this topic, because that was something that really struck me when I read that. And because it's something I believe too. And I know that you expand on that in different places. And so I'm just really grateful for this conversation today. And I just want people to get more of you and what you offer, because me spending time with you and having you go into my own records, even though I go into my own, I don't do it as part of my business for other people like you do. But sometimes we need help in getting, around certain things, because I can get in my own way or interpret things differently, and having that your help in being and helping me know that this was the right path for me, because I was questioning, and really bringing up things that there's no way you could have known about, just for people who want, validation that it works, that it does work. When I was sitting with you and going through the records, and then also bringing it back home to that purpose and that mission of, and just really validating for me and having an eye opening and a really heartfelt experience of just deepening my truth of who I am and what I'm here to do and be was so beautiful. And I thank you for that so much.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, it's an honor. It was an honor to be in that space with you and to hold that space for you. And absolutely. On the topic of that, so I also teach the Akashic Records, right? Because I believe that it is so empowering for us to be able to, and you know this from accessing your own records
Mhm.
too, how empowering it can be to have access to ourselves at a soul
Yeah.
level like that. And so I actually have a virtual retreat coming up, Ascension in the Akasha, where I essentially teach all of what we've discussed today, which is, a combination of answering that call to deeper truth, to living more deeply expressed in your truth, and navigating that through learning how to access your Akashic records. So my next event is coming up at the end of April, and it's so transformational.
Oh, I love that. How do people get that information?
Yeah, I can make sure that you have a link to share with folks, but it's called Ascension in the Akasha. And actually, the easiest place to go to learn more about me and to have access to that information as well is to visit my website, jenniferspor.com. And if you just hover over the work with me part of the menu on the top of the page, you'll see the drop down where all the different ways that you can learn about working with me, including Ascension in the Akasha, which is coming up at the end of April.
Oh, this is great. And then you're on social media.
Yep. Social media. I hang out mostly on Instagram. So my Instagram handle is Jennifer underscore Spor. So yeah, that's a great place to go to kind of see what I'm up to day to day.
Yeah, and we'll have all that in the show notes so that people can just click and be able to find you. And you also kind of have a little free gift for listeners that I'd like you to share about.
Yes, I do. I love this gift so much. It is a free guided meditation to activate your highest destiny. So this
Mhm.
highest destiny activation is done in the energy of the Akashic records, and you'll be guided through a journey to step across that threshold to choose your next level of expansion. I've actually received messages from so many people that have listened to that journey and shared with me that they listen to it multiple times and that they experience something new every time they do. So I'm so happy to share that.
Oh, good. Yes, we're going to share that link to get that in the show notes. And what a powerful conversation. I am so grateful that our paths have crossed and that they continue to cross in this lifetime, because I know that's for a reason and a purpose. And I just love everything that you are, and that you share, and that you're really out to help women really just be able to express their truth, to live their truth, to be their truth. And everything you share here today, I'm going to definitely go back and listen, because you dropped so many golden nuggets. I can't wait to listen again.
Oh, thank you so much. It's just such
Yeah.
a blessing and an honor to be here with you and your listeners, and
Yes.
to share all of this, and that's, what we're here for, right? Each one of us is unique, and we have a unique purpose and mission. At the same time, we are all very much connected on our journey. So
Very much connected. Oh, well, thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm so grateful for you.
thank you.
Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did enjoy it, would you do me a favor and share this episode, and then follow us on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss one episode of the Forgive Yourself podcast, where every Friday you will get tips, tools, and stories so that you can turn your pain into peace. Take care.